Hey, Nerf Herders, I'm Addy Thomas.
I'm Ben Milton.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Certain Point of View as we explore some of the new content or new topics or people who are part of the Star Wars universe in some way or another. Today, we're going to be talking about content. We got a new episode of Resistance, the end of the first half of this season. They're going to go on a little bit of a break, but we've got the latest episode of Resistance. And we have finally made some more progress with comics. We're getting back there because we're going to get to some of the cooler comics too and some of the ongoing comics. So that way we're not giving you these long runs of comics, but just like issue by issue rather than...
We can get into it a little deeper.
Yeah, rather than like 20 issues at a time.
Right.
So... but right now we're still in that phase. We'll talk about all of that in just a moment, but I do want to remind you that you can check out all of the other podcasts that are part of the Certain Point of View family, because not only is there Certain Point of View, this podcast itself, but we've also got Another Pass with Case Aiken, where he revisits movies. We've got Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff, where they talk about video games, and they were also the reason, the final nail in the coffin to why I finally spent way too much money and bought a Switch and games and a basic amount of accessories for it, and have also created a new addiction in my life. So thank you guys for that. Matt Storm from that podcast is joined by MJ Bradley Lestrange on Reignite as they replay through and ponder their decisions in Mass Effect.
And how cool was it to have MJ join us last night on Discord?
Right, yeah.
While we were playing WoW.
That's right. While we were playing WoW, while Ben was streaming from his CPOV Ben Facebook page, we actually were joined by MJ, and that was actually the first time I actually talked to her, outside of like a chat program.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we type to each other all the time.
Right, so it was cool getting a chance to talk a little bit with her, and she got to join us a little bit on the stream for those few minutes. So that was fun. You can follow our WoW streaming adventures, and not just our WoW streaming adventures, other games that we play, and other games that Matt Stormageddon also plays. You can find the information for those streams on our website, certainpov.com. Don't forget, there's one more podcast I wanted to mention, and that is the Scruffy Nerf Herders, the Star Wars D20 story. We have a brand new episode of that just came out this past week, so you can definitely check that out as we continue our adventures as it's a D20 Dungeons & Dragons style adventure through the Star Wars universe with like the E-level team.
E-level?
Like, we're the backups. Like, we're not even the backups of the backups.
Yeah.
Like, we're contingency plan 0.
That's like nobody wants us. They're like, even if we need them, don't call those guys.
Like, we've already failed if we get to these guys. But no, we have some fun adventures there, and you can catch up on all of that on our website, certainpov.com. Let's actually get into... actually, I do want to talk, before we get into any of this, let's talk actually a little bit about our streaming, because that's been a lot of fun lately.
I am having a blast. I tried a new format last night. I'm trying to do a vertical format since I'm streaming on Facebook, right? Most, like 75% of Facebook viewers
it's
Facebook
vertical.
on their phone.
Because of your phone, yeah.
So, and it's a pain in the ass to have to flip your phone to see the whole screen. So I was trying a new vertical layout. It failed miserably. I had to go back to the horizontal
Did you do vertical or did you do square?
Vertical.
Okay.
I read a whole tutorial from Facebook on what to do with OBS and all this stuff, and apparently I missed a step.
Okay.
Somewhere I still haven't figured it out, but I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I am loving streaming.
We're having a lot of fun. Ben in particular has been really, really good about streaming regularly, even when. We're not. We have our Wednesday night runs with our guild in World of Warcraft on the Alliance side. Of course, you're welcome to join us if you're a WoW player already and want to join us, or if you want to
hang out on the stream.
Yeah, just come and hang out on stream, watch us and talk and hang out, or join us on Discord for that matter. So that's a really cool thing. You guys are welcome to join us on Discord and chat with us all the time, not just about WoW, Star Wars. We've got game recommendations. We got all sorts of cool stuff happening right now on our Discord with all of our different podcasts. Talking about different movies that you might you'd like Case to try out for,
including
Another
Highlander
Pass.
2.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on there. We'd love to hang out with you guys. We have social media, and you can always comment there. But there's something more fun with the immediacy of something like Discord,
and the fact that we could just hop in a voice chat occasionally.
Yeah,
and talk
you
to
can
each
join
other.
us there.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to join us there. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to play with you guys if you are willing to take the jump into Azeroth, whether you've done it before or haven't done it before.
We have a couple new players in the guild.
Yeah,
they're really loving it,
and we're more than happy to help you power level and get. Trust me, we've been doing this for years with friends. Like, we love bringing new people into the game, and we'd love to have you join us. So again, you can check out all of that on our website, certainpov.com, and join us on Discord. But let's go ahead and get into some Star Wars.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, so we got a new episode of Resistance.
Yeah,
I really like this episode a lot. Until you actually kind of mentioned something today, just a few minutes ago, that it's kind of a repeat of a lot of other stories we've seen with Poe Dameron.
It's every story we've seen with Poe Dameron.
Yeah. But here's what I did like. Well, we got to see some Phasma.
Yes.
We got to see some stuff with, like, the growing, like, presence.
Hold on. Since we're on Phasma, we get to see Phasma fall down again, like get blown up and fall down again.
Well, here's a very important thing that I saw in a comment section as far as getting ready for Episode 9. Phasma falls a lot. There's no guarantee that she's dead. She is the Kenny of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. She's going to have to be, because every time we see her, she's getting blown up and falling down.
So there is still a possibility. I don't think there is a possibility, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, we do have like Phasma is definitely like a cat. She's got plenty of extra lives. And is able to sometimes land on her feet at times where we don't necessarily expect her to.
I hope she comes back in like some sort of like and becomes like a real monstrous type of being. Yeah,
that'd be cool. I'd be
burnt up face because her mask was cracked in the flames and stuff. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to see them do more with her in Resistance to really make her develop her into a much more
so that she can have just a really lame death.
Well, to give us a villain that's done a few things that I'm okay. Like, here's the thing: I'm not a Boba Fett fan. I'm not a Jango Fett fan. I'm not like I think Mandalorians. Do you like the
Mandalorians
are cool.
At all?
Yes, I think Mandalorians are super cool.
You're just
they
not
are
into
cool
those
looking.
two.
But yeah, like, here's the thing: like, I think that, like, at the end of the day, they're cool looking characters. And their reputation is far overblown than the evidence of what we've seen on screen.
Yes, than what we've seen on screen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But for even people who like to talk about Boba Fett being a super badass in Empire Strikes Back, I mean, there's a lot implied.
But we don't actually see him do much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Phasma is sort of this in that same vein.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I actually, in a lot of ways, like, I like Phasma on sort of the same level, that she's super cool looking character, but there isn't that much substance to her. I'm fine with that for the movies, but the extended universe is a good place. Yeah, it's a good place to build that out.
I don't like that that's her end, though.
In Last Jedi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's used for Finn's character arc rather than for her own.
Yeah.
But I think that's also a consequence of Star Wars villains, other than like the A villain in any
not getting much.
Yeah.
Development.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, like,
they're just henchmen, basically. They're just Bond villains.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, because even like, I mean, Palpatine isn't like is only truly an A villain when you get to the prequels.
Right.
He's totally a cackling maniac.
When you do get to see him.
When you first see him, when we chronologically, when we first see him. So it's like really Vader and Palpatine, as far as the movies, and now Kylo Ren, are really the only developed villains. Everyone else is very one-dimensional. Hux, Snoke, Phasma, Fett, and any of the Fets. Dooku. I think Dooku has maybe slightly more nuance, and I think Maul only got nuance in the extended universe, in Clones, and in some ways, actually, I think Rebels actually gave him much more nuance.
Really went deep with him.
I've been wanting to go back and rewatch some of those episodes with Maul from Rebels, in particular, because I've been really, really wanting to get into some watch some Kurosawa films.
Okay.
Like really watch some of the things that influenced Star Wars.
Yeah.
Especially because of that fight in like the final Obi-Wan versus Maul fight that was very samurai and Kurosawa like. But just the idea of the efficiency of a samurai fight and the efficiency of that fight. Like I was reading something about that and its influence on the Last Jedi duel, or quote unquote duel
between Kylo and Luke.
Exactly, and just the way that fight and just the mannerisms and how much what that says about who a Jedi is versus a Sith, and that in that sort of the fancy duels of the prequels, in some ways
diminished that.
Well, actually, that is in some ways an example of the Jedi
falling.
Yeah, because
losing who they are.
Right, because it is no longer. It's almost about the like. You even hear like Anakin and Obi-Wan talk about like, oh, you never be a better lightsaber dueler than like Yoda or
Dooku
or Mace Windu,
right.
guys like that. And it's like, well, the dueling isn't what a Jedi is supposed to be about. The efficiency of like finishing the fight is one of those things that's not part of that. And it's a great example of that is that Obi-Wan Anakin fight on Mustafar, which is just
going on.
Which is a masturbatory fight. But in a way, now you can look at. I feel maybe it wasn't the intention when it was created, but I do think you can look at that now and in the bigger context of it all, with what we've built on with the extended universe, with The Last Jedi, with Force Awakens, and with all the new Disney stuff, that it actually does. You can look at that now as a way of like, oh, like that actually is maybe
fits the narrative of the Jedi losing their way.
Exactly.
Yeah, and of Lucas losing his way. As well, in a sense.
Yeah.
I completely agree, and I've thought of that before too. Of like, for being a samurai is a good example, but it's not a complete example because it misses the mysticism element of what a Jedi is ideally.
Yes.
So it's like a holy warrior, a priest warrior kind of combination.
Right.
That you lose a lot of that in the prequels. For as much as they expanded the lore of all that, like they also like really like lost the original focus of what the Jedi were when we meet Ben Kenobi and what he's teaching Luke and stuff like that, and how he carries himself and how they're depicted. Like even that original duel, as lame as it really is, watching Vader fight Ben Kenobi in Star Wars, but it's just like the simple execution and how they hold the swords.
Yeah.
And how it's very kendo stick like in their movements of battle.
Right.
And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Alec Guinness probably couldn't raise his arms above his head.
Well, he actually there's some moves that are in. Have you seen some of that footage that they've cut down?
No.
He actually puts in a couple more moves.
Oh, they
but it just look. Yeah, it doesn't.
No,
look,
because it wasn't good.
It's not so much it doesn't look good. It's just the effects don't like.
Up.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where.
Technology hurt him.
Yeah, well, it'd be very interesting what you would do if we talked about this last week. If you were to do an animated version, of like do an animated remake of all of the Star Wars movies, keeping the original audio. I mean, you probably at that point you would redo some of the lightsaber audio, but like you keep the dialogue.
Right.
You could totally make a little bit more of a dynamic lightsaber fight, but it's probably something still within the spirit of maybe something closer to what Rebels did.
Yeah.
Right.
Which more of a Kurosawa style fight where these are still even the Last Jedi fight, like you said, the Last Jedi fight is a very samurai-esque, like Japan influenced.
The footwork, the preparation before the fight is where the fight is won.
Yes, it's more of a mental game. Yeah, and then you just see it play out physically. Luke just brushing the dust off his shoulder and stuff like that. Just the very subtle taunt. In that moment, of just like knowing I'm in control and all that stuff, all that psychological stuff. I mean, I used to live on that stuff when I was a kid and watching like every Sunday they had like kung fu films on TV. They would just stream like 6 hours of kung fu movies on Channel 20 in Philadelphia. And I would just sit there every Sunday and watch. I watched every stupid one of them. I mean, I loved them. And I thought they were all real too. Like,
Yeah, of course.
it wasn't until like the UFC really took off, we were like, oh yeah, all that stuff is bullshit. All that's bullshit. But yeah, I'm totally down. We should sit down and watch. We should sit down and watch some films sometime. I'd totally be down. We should put a film, like you and I have talked about. You had the idea of putting a.
I'd like to put together a film festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see in the years to come, but I would absolutely love to do a film festival where, and let me message us if this is something you guys are interested in, or maybe people who can put together a film festival. I'm sure we need to talk to Case because I'm sure he has some
connections.
Yeah, some connections, at least in terms of putting on events like this. I'd love to do a. Well, let's see. At this point, it would be an 11-day film festival, because I would give each day dedicate each day to a different Star Wars movie. So that's all 8 episodes, and then Solo, and of course Rogue One as well. But then do a little bit of research on like different movies that those directors are influenced by when making those movies, and there's a lot you can choose from, obviously, but maybe choose like 2-3 to show in that same day, and then end the day with that Star Wars movie. But in between, have discussions and panels and all sorts of different stuff. I think that'd be a lot of fun to really do, and I mean it'd be a nice little sort of it's a different Star Wars event, and and a very different experience. But it also is very it opens you up to the different storytelling that Star Wars is a part of, and that tradition that it's a part of, as opposed to just being Star Wars for the sake of Star Wars. You know.
Yep.
So,
it gives you a deeper appreciation of the film.
Exactly. I think so too. Yeah, but I think I think the other side of it is I think it can also inspire us to, as far as what we want to put out into the world. Like for us, this podcast is one of the ways we want to put something out that we find meaningful in some way.
Yeah.
For us, it is commentary about Star Wars, and there's other things that we're doing alongside, the different other podcasts that we're doing, and other creative projects that we're doing as well, that where we can kind of put something out that we feel has some sort of meaning. And I think encouraging people to do that is one of the coolest things ever about Star Wars to me. When I hear someone is a Star Wars fan and it's affected them in a way where they've made some sort of decision in their life based on that, as far like whether that's kind of career or the work that they've dedicated themselves or the way they look at life, I think has always been an interesting thing. So yeah, it's a very long way to avoid this episode of Resistance, but now we'll actually get to that episode of Resistance. So in this episode, we had we had Princess Leia, we had General Leia give a mission to Kaz and Poe. So this happens off the Colossus. We're not on the platform, and we have Kaz and Poe carry out a spy mission together to investigate a station, which is a mining station that the First Order has just abandoned, and it turns out that there's some information there. Turns out that they mined a lot of a particular mineral, a particular material that's especially used for blasters, and it's really really hinting, not hardly even hinting, it's showing that they are mobilizing and militarizing big time, and they're getting ready to make a big move, but they are also wanting to still stay in the shadows at this point, because in the process of this, while our heroes think it's abandoned, we find out that Captain Phasma and is it Commander Pyre or is it the Baron?
It's the Baron. It's the guy in red.
Yes, that's right. So we have an ace pilot that looks like will be another character, will be a major villain for the series. We see them show up at this point to destroy this station. We have a little bit of a fight. Kaz and Poe are able to escape, and they are able to but First Order is able to destroy the platform, but not before that they're able to get enough intel to bring this to Leia. So this is part of what I appreciate about this is the continuing world building that's been implied, but now kind of spelling out. All right, this is why the New Republic doesn't really take the First Order seriously or the Resistance seriously.
Yeah.
We have very few little bits of pieces. Like one of the things I also appreciate, I think also in the Poe Dameron comics we're going to be talking about, there's some of that world building that comes as part of that. The unfortunate thing, and I think you'd be better to explain this, is it seems like there's only one story that can be told about Poe.
And that is Princess Leia telling him not to do something and then him doing it and it backfiring and causing a big ruckus and a problem, but he still gets away with it.
Yeah.
And it's a repeated theme for Poe Dameron that is kind of nice because it pays off in some ways in The Last Jedi. It makes you appreciate his growth as a character in Last Jedi when he finally learns the lesson. But the fucking lesson is getting really repetitive.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I get it. He's a hotshot pilot who just flies by the seat of his pants and gets away with stuff because he's got plot armor.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's tiring in a lot of ways.
What makes that different than seeing Han Solo doing that?
We only got to see it in the movies.
Yeah. There's a few stuff in the comics, I guess, but yeah, we never really saw that in cartoons or anything. We haven't gotten a Han Solo cartoon.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think I
guess a lot of that's extended universe at this point.
A lot of that is extended universe at this point, and old legends and stuff. Yeah, the other problem I think that goes along with it, why is it more offensive for Poe than it is for Han, is because we've already seen it with Han.
Yeah. So it adds on to, it's like, okay, we've already seen.
And we all know that Poe is kind of the analog
for Han
in this new generation.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we've already kind of seen this in a lot of ways. And I'm sure new viewers and people who are just coming into Star Wars and are fresh on these characters are loving Poe and think Poe is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And that's totally cool. But for some of the old-timers like me, we're like, all right, well, he's just a Han Solo knockoff. And he's not even, in my opinion, not as charming as Han Solo.
Yeah.
In some ways. He has BB-8 instead of a Wookiee. He's already a notch
below.
It's
not quite the same relationship.
No.
Yeah, he's a little too into that droid, as we've mentioned before.
He's super into that
That's
droid.
his Leia.
Yeah, it does seem to be that way. And yet it's weird that he doesn't seem to have a problem with the romance between BB-8 and that other droid he's running around with.
Droids got to be droids, I guess.
Yeah, which is another really weird thing in this episode of that romance between the two droids.
Yeah,
it's just
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it. It's just weird. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why, all right. Weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little different. I appreciated Kaz a little bit more in this episode. I think because he is a little bit of a character that's a little tough. It can be a little tough and grating at times to really like. I thought him being a little bit more the voice of reason in this episode was a nice little change.
Twist, yeah.
I also really liked there was a little detail. I love that this is the first time he's actually really using a blaster.
Yeah.
That the only time he used was in simulation and training. And I think that's a great detail to just show how unprepared the Republic was.
Right.
That just how complacent they had been and why the First Order is able to come in so easily.
Strange because they just came out of the Empire.
30 years, though. I think people are not giving enough credit to the 30 years of time passing. Because here's the thing. 30 years ago, 30 years ago was what? 90, no, not 98. That would be 1988. Mm-hmm. So think about how different life is from then.
But also 30-year, yeah.
Think about
different.
Okay.
So let's use World War II World War II is a better example. 1945 or whatever, World War II ends, right? 30 years later, it's 1975.
Yeah.
Our country's still aware of World War II and still affected by that.
So the reason I was going to use 88 to 18 is like using that example of like that era of the Cold War and the lessons we should have learned at the end of the Cold War, and like we're just getting out of that. You start having these issues where we've helped. We've helped terrorists. We've helped equip certain organizations and regimes against the Soviet Union, and now they're coming back to bite us. Like, that passage of time kind of makes sense for me. Like,
I see what you're saying, except for I don't think it works, because I think we're even more militaristic and more prepared now,
right,
as a country.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. It is
a
larger.
Lessons,
yes, we've forgotten lessons, and it is a large stretch of time where. But the Empire's grip on the universe and its effect on the universe, is always shown to be so destructive, and so overwhelming, like more of a World War I, World War II level of destruction and bad and effectiveness than the Cold War, which was just like a lot of saber rattling.
That's true.
And spy versus spy.
But here's another perspective to look at from. You also know that there is a great fear of a centralized power at that point. So, and giving anybody that level of authority and that sort of militarization would scare planets that want to be far more independent and demilitarized, which is why, and this is knowing from reading stuff before The Force Awakens came out, so this is a little bit unfair when you're talking about the world-building aspect, I think. But I think we'll get that now with some of the extended universe, is this idea that the seat of power for the Republic would change periodically throughout the galaxy to different systems.
Okay.
And that Republic fleet would move to each of those systems, but it was vastly cut down. We do have a little bit of that implication. We know that Yeager was a pilot, and that they cut down their fleet. So now he became a racer and for a while, and so did his brother, and all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to get that like little pieces of that picture, but it instead of having like all of a sudden Coruscant would like reach out again and like send their fleets to quell something, or like it could very easily transition again from that. Like I think you also have to look at it as like they saw a republic before that failed because of that militarization,
centralization.
Yeah, centralization and militarization. So maybe that's just what made the Republic overly cautious and not prepared for the First Order while they were, preparing out in the unknown regions.
Right.
Because they're not even in the Outer Rim. That's another thing to remember. The First Order doesn't really have a presence in the Outer Rim. Like they're just getting in there. Like they've been going to town in the unknown regions, and we have yet to really get any real story out there. So like we've got.
I'm dying to know what's going on out there.
Yeah, especially from the Thrawn perspective. I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see when Thrawn comes back.
Yeah.
I think we've hit on most of the points for this episode of Resistance, but. It's funny. I was having a conversation with our friend David, and he's kind of like, I'm going to keep watching Resistance, but he was saying he's not really feeling Resistance right now.
Oh, I thought he was back in on it. I thought he was super into it.
I think he's up and down. Who knows? He now he hasn't seen this last episode yet.
Oh, okay.
So, maybe that'll change it a little bit. I don't know if it'll change it that much. But we did talk a little bit, and he said he is missing Force users, and he hasn't gotten into any of the characters that we've seen in Resistance.
I feel him on that one.
Yeah.
There isn't anybody who I'm really connecting with and like who has really stepped up and made me take notice of them.
Yeah.
They all are pretty one-dimensional still.
I think they're all very foreign as Star Wars characters in some ways, because here's the thing. So Clone Wars had the advantage, like, other than Ahsoka, everyone we had already known. Like, we already knew Anakin, we knew Obi-Wan, we knew Padme, so we were already invested in those characters. Yoda, Mace, Palpatine, all of those characters we had already seen. So we already had some level of investment. We knew about the Clone Wars. We knew the start point and the end point to that series, so we were like, okay, we know what's going on. Ahsoka's this new thing. I don't know how to treat that, but eventually people came around to Ahsoka, which is sort of the thing, like the comparison people have been making with Kaz. Similar to Kaz, the same deal with Ezra and Rebels, but at least with Rebels, we had
Jedi.
We had a Jedi.
Mandalorian.
We had a Mandalorian. We had a Twi'lek in a pilot in a freighter that looked a lot like the Millennium Falcon. You have a creature that was pretty much the original version of Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the concept art for Chewbacca, that was the old one. And you had a droid, and you had your droid. So you had, like, that Star Wars formula already there.
Yeah.
This, honestly, is actually completely different than anything we've seen in... Like, this is not a Star Wars formula, to be perfectly honest. We got racers. Like... The last time we dealt with racers was the pod race,
Right.
And that wasn't the feature of the story, That was sort of a side mission that happened in a movie, and it wasn't like we got into who the racers were and in the culture of the racing circuit, what those people did, in their lives, how the galaxy, like how they related to the galaxy as well, and that's what we're getting right now in Resistance. This is brand new territory.
That's true on one level. On the other, on another level, we're getting a lot of the same things that we've had before too. We have a young male protagonist.
Well, you got your hero's journey.
Who has, So there's still a lot of familiarity.
True.
In this story, where it's not like it's like,
You've
oh
seen
God,
X-Wings.
I don't know what to. Is this even Star Wars?
Right. That's true. That's true.
Like, it's not that foreign.
Yeah.
We have some different races and people in different positions, but we still have BB-8.
Yeah.
We still have a young
X-Wings.
male protagonist. We still have an X-Wing. We still have blasters.
Yeah.
We still have stormtroopers.
But here's the thing. When you look at the bigger context of Star Wars, the Starfighter battles are really something that was maybe a bigger deal in the original trilogy. It hasn't been a huge deal, really, actually, in the new trilogy either. Because they're not big scale. There are a couple small skirmishes here or there.
It's a chase scene.
And the chase scene in Last Jedi. But other than that, really, the first Death Star, a little bit of Empire, very little bit of Empire. Not really, because it's mostly a land battle in Empire. But it's really first and second Death Stars where we get the big dogfights. It's funny because that was one of the things that's always made me fall. That was the first thing that made me fall in love with Star Wars, was the dogfighting. And that's one thing I loved about this episode, was we got some of that action.
Even though it was sort of a NASCAR action where they just kept going around the base.
Oh, right,
just kept turning left.
That's fair. That's fair.
I did notice that. I was like, they're not really, they just keep turning.
Yeah, I can give you that. But yeah, we still got
fun.
some. Yeah.
It was still fun.
Like, there was still
see.
some tension, So, it's interesting to see that's a story that's kind of got like fallen in the background of Star Wars in some ways, even though it's part of the backbone of Star Wars. But in a way, the Force user is far more featured than the pilot as a hero.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I wonder if it's because the Force user feels more fantastical, but also more achievable.
I feel like the pilot's more achievable.
In reality, it is. But like when you look at it, you go, okay, like I would rather be the guy holding the lightsaber than the guy flying the jet.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe achievable. So achievable is the wrong word, but
more the fantasy.
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
I'd like to be the guy with the laser sword and magical powers that's able to lift rocks.
Yeah.
Versus, I mean, I know there's already pilots.
Right.
And I don't have what it takes to be that pilot.
Yeah.
So maybe I could be a Force user.
Well, let's use that to transition into the issues of Poe Dameron that we read or browsed for today's episode. And we wrapped up the Poe Dameron series. Did you get a chance to get all the way to the end, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hollow yes. So there's some cool stuff. There's some repetitive stuff. But to kind of summarize, so we read Annual number 2. Annual number 2 was sort of interesting. That one, it was all right. It it was sort of a little bit of an interesting perspective on another, like an artifact. A little bit, you got a little bit of Han there too. But let's focus in on issues 20. It's really about issues 20 to 31 to wrap up the run. One of the main sections of this was to kick this off. Is you had the Nemoidian vaults.
Yes.
And they had captured Lor San Tekka. So we know that Lor San Tekka, Max von Sydow's character at the beginning of Force Awakens, the one who gives the map to Poe. They're trying to rescue him because he got caught by the Nemoidians, who now have, instead of being part of the Trade Federation, have this sort of these vaults that they sell to
safeguard stuff.
Yeah, to high paying clients that want to save stuff, and they are going to execute him, but Leia obviously needs him. She goes on with a pretense of trying to become one of their clients.
She's going to drop off some dresses.
Right. So her mother's dresses.
Her mom's dresses.
I thought that was an interesting
it was a nice reference,
callback.
But yeah, okay.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting callback. It was also like a different way we've never really seen Leia dressed up as royalty.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting, that's not a Leia we've seen. So that was an interesting, her, we have not actually seen Leia as a diplomat. So getting her to use a skill set that we know she has, but we're only told that she has,
right.
I thought it was very interesting. Having her, go out and do that, I thought that was cool. The heist was okay. It was a little bit boring. You had some old droid fighters, kick into action. I thought that was kind of interesting.
The fact that they were like they had taken out the safety chip and they were willing to just ram them.
Oh yeah,
was made the stakes interesting.
Yes,
without that, it would have been like whatever.
Yeah, who cares? Because these are the best pilots ever.
Yeah, so that was good writing.
So you had that, but then you also had Agent Terrickson, who has now been who has an implant who's blocking his free will, but also his new commander, who's just a cackling supervillain that has a steroid that she uses. It had its moments. Yeah. For me, I think this series has depended a lot on Agent Terrick's being interesting.
Yes.
When he's there, I am much more interested in the story.
Because again, I think Poe is just the more I'm exposed to Poe, the less I like him.
Yeah.
Is my problem.
Yeah.
I really liked Poe.
Yeah.
In when The Force Awakens came out, I liked him again in The Last Jedi.
Right.
As I'm reading these comic books, I'm liking him, and I'm seeing him in Resistance. I'm liking him less and less and less. Where I'm just like, okay, I need him. I need to get past the point that he gets in The Last Jedi.
Yeah, we need to see him in Episode 9. Really.
Yeah.
We need to see where he's the leader of the Resistance.
Yes.
And because bit more mature rather than...
the flyboy, just, shooting at the hip thing is getting old.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you should have learned this lesson by now.
Yeah, exactly.
You really should. It shouldn't have taken you all the way to Last Jedi to
get to this
figure this out.
Right. I agree with you on that. I did like seeing the Nemoidians again.
Yes.
And sort of even the way they kind of are trying to rebuild their reputation in the galaxy was sort of an interesting perspective to go with here. This was fine. I like that the mission fails and sort of the consequence of it, and Terrick's and that having the way they had to save Lor San Tekka and what that means, him going on his mission to find Luke. I like the clarification that it's not like he had a map to Luke Skywalker. He had ideas of where he was going to be. He did some research and enough to say, hey, this is most likely where he's going to be. Yeah. Because that's I know that's one of those things that people are like, well, why is there a map to Luke Skywalker if he was trying to hide,
Who leaves a map where you're going?
Exactly.
And it's a valid question. question.
It is.
It's a really valid question.
It is. It is. But
So it's a nice little job of retconning a little bit there.
yeah. Well, it's not quite retconning. It is.
Explaining away.
It's implied in it. It's just never really. It's not. It could have been written a little clearer.
It was not well written.
Yeah. The other thing we've got going after that storyline is now actually sort of like a catch-up series. We get this from the perspective of Poe talking to Rey and Finn on the Falcon right after Last Jedi. So we have a bit of a time jump after, and we get to find out how Poe was able to survive on Jakku. You know, we get the retcon there.
Or at least
that's definitely a retcon. Yeah. We get the explanation of that, how he was able to get to where he was supposed to get, all those kind of details. But then we find out what happened to Black Squadron in the course of The Last Jedi, because they're not there. They're in The Last Jedi. Yeah. But we get to find out about the mission they were sent on. And that really works for me.
Yeah.
In a big way. I really like the idea of them going out to try to find allies for the Resistance while
this horrible event is happening.
Yeah, while they're trying to escape Dakar, and then they get to the crate, like the main story, the storyline that we see.
Yeah.
Because that it's in fact kind of implied that Leia's trying to call out to people, and
nobody answers.
Right, and this is kind of part of that process of collecting new allies to build a resistance. So the kind of people that they're coming across were, I thought, very fascinating. I like Jess Pava's character a lot. I thought she's a fun character. And her being the viewpoint character was definitely worthwhile. In some ways, it's too bad that this series wasn't about Jess Pava instead of Poe Dameron. And that's not necessarily like we always got to go with the girl power way, but she's a fun character.
Yeah,
she's interesting, and like you even have like the fun gimmick of the fact that droids don't want to be they don't want to be her astromech because they all die. Yeah, exactly. I even like the moment where that one droid sacrifices themselves for her Ivy.
Yes.
I thought that was a fun moment.
Yeah.
It had a little bit of like a very slight emotional payoff to it.
Yeah.
And the little thing with the chip that's given to BB-8 and everything like that. I thought apparently BB-8 is a bit of a player on the droid scene.
Apparently
in the Resistance space, I guess. So but yeah, I thought that was a fun bit there. And she's an interesting viewpoint character. And we got two interesting missions out of it. One to a planet that kind of uses these resistance fighters to secure their power, but then is not really interested. It is just kind of going with the wind. And I thought it was really interesting that it was like winged insects. It's very much in their nature.
Yes.
To like you have to go with the winds.
We got wings. We don't have a choice,
right? But that they were going to end up going with the First Order after using these resistance fighters, and then a mission for these resistance fighters against all odds to help save this one particular city as well, which was a cool fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was pretty happy with that story to end it. And what was very interesting though is it ends it on this idea of like, all right, like saving your galaxy and changing it in the way you can. It's not about heroes, it's about making the difference that you can.
Where you are.
Right. And I like that message a lot. I like that idea. Like, we were talking about the fantasy of like being the pilot or being the Jedi, and like these idealized versions, which they have their place. They're archetypes for us that some of us can aspire to, or some of us can see certain lessons enacted through these archetypes, whether they're a success or failure for these various characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like it should translate to you having some sort of meaning in this world. It should translate to you deciding who you are supposed to be in this world. And I thought that was a great place to wrap up and take the end of this Poe series. Like it felt like the right conclusion for it.
Right.
Instead of just like because there are moments where you have to be the hotshot pilot, but there are moments to be the wizened leader, to make the right choice. So yeah, I was really happy with that. There were a couple of really interesting. There was one moment that got me a little bit in the feels more than any other though. I'm not sure if you got it too, but I really liked Leia and Chewie in the cockpit of the Falcon.
Yep.
And then Nien Nunb.
Yes.
And Chewie. The fist bump was pretty awesome.
Felt good.
Yeah, like that shouldn't feel that good for two characters you've never
you don't really see a lot of.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
especially Nien Nunb. Yeah, but Nien Nunb, it's been great having him around. Like Jenny and I watched The Last Jedi 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was just like, there's Nien Nunb. Like it's so good to see him.
Right? He's still there. He's still kicking.
Doing all right. He's doing okay. But to go back to what you were saying about the lesson, I think that's true. I think the old saying of everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves.
Yeah.
Is sort of the lesson of Poe Dameron.
Yes.
He's going to change the galaxy, but what he really needs to do is change himself, and then things can start to happen. And we just have this long stretch of stories of Poe trying to change the galaxy, and it's not until we see him in The Last Jedi where he changes himself that we actually see growth for him.
Right.
And that's a lesson for all of us too. I think when you talk about Star Wars and you talk about these archetypes and the hero's journey, it all comes back to the fact that that sounds great, but it's really all about you and your own journey. And what are you going to do? And maybe that's not out saving the galaxy. Maybe that's out changing yourself and becoming a better person and becoming a more rounded person, becoming a healthier person. That's all wrapped up in that ball of meaning. And I think ultimately that's what we get from the Poe Dameron Han Solo stories, right? Yeah. Han Solo's the same way in a lot of ways of he's just in it for himself. He doesn't really care about anybody else. It's just him and money. And then we find out, oh no, he falls in love with the princess and he's starting, to have, he does the right thing for the rebellion. And he it starts changing him, and he becomes a better person as a result of just trying to go out and do his own thing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that's the lesson of all good stories, especially Star Wars stories, of hey, you need to fix you. It's your own journey. It's Luke's journey into maturity of understanding. Even in The Last Jedi, he's still on that process and sits down and has that talk with Yoda, and Yoda's like, you still don't get it.
Right.
You still don't understand. You need to learn this lesson.
Which, actually, coming back to the Poe Dameron series for a moment, I thought I was going to wrap up after you said that. But there's a very interesting exchange between Lor Santeca and Agent Terex that I thought it was a great moment between the two of them, where Terex, who is he's basically a spy for the First Order because he really truly believed in the greatness of the Empire, and Lor Santeca is this guy who is very interested in the Force and the nature of it, and he's looking back on it, and it's very there's an interesting exchange between the two of them, and I might need to pull this up, but So you may need to take this over for me for just a little bit, but it's kind of about nostalgia,
right?
And the two of them just being old people, old men who look back on things in fondness because that's all you have at that point.
Yeah, because time tends to make you forget about some of the ugliness, and time heals all wounds, but it also blurs your memory of what actually happened and some of the sorrow and some of the stress and some of the what's the word I'm looking? Suffering that exists in your time period. So when you look back on things, like when I look back on as a kid, where my dad died, I didn't have a stepfather that I liked. My home life was kind of crazy, but yet when I look back on my life as a child, I have a lot of really good memories of that time period. Even though when I think about it, I go, oh no, I wasn't a happy kid at all.
Right.
I was pretty depressed.
Yeah.
But when I look back on it, there's a lot of
There's certain
nostalgia.
things that you've associated with a simpler time in your life, so that you can enjoy certain things.
Yes.
So bringing back the comic. I don't have the issue number on hand because I'm already in the comic, but at this point in the story, Agent Terex has the cybernetic implants that he's trying to get free from, and he uses Lord Santeca in a deal to get him removed, right? But he has been shocking them and shocking himself and enduring some pain to do this. So you have Lord Santeca say, if you keep shocking yourself like that, Terex, you're likely to die. And he replies, if I can't get these blasted implants out of my skull, I might as well be dead. Lord Santeca asks, and if the First Order agrees to remove the implants in exchange for giving me to them, then what? Do you really think they will welcome you back with open arms? Terex, again, this guy who's a loyalist to the Empire and really believes in what they did for the galaxy, he says, certainly not. That's not what I'm looking for. It was a mistake to join up with them in the first place. The Empire is gone, and I was a fool to think it could return. I let myself be seduced by a dream of days long past. Lord Santeca replies, don't be too hard on yourself. Dreaming of old days past is what old men are supposed to do, and it gets worse the older you become. These days, it's basically all I do. Terex replies, yes, I bet you've seen a thing or two in this strange galaxy of yours, old man. Me too. Believe me, me too. I like you, Lord Santeca. It's almost a pity. It's interesting seeing these characters, they're going into The Last Jedi and the whole idea of the lessons we have to learn from our past, this view on the Jedi and the Force and this view on the Empire, from these two characters on two different sides. It's such an interesting moment to look at and understand, okay, it's important to look at how we evaluate our pasts and the truth of what is valuable in that past and what isn't. Or even not necessarily what isn't, but what we have to learn from it.
Right.
I just find that fascinating because I think to me, that's one of the greatest things about The Last Jedi is ultimately that it's not that the Jedi are bad and that the Jedi need to end. Because I don't agree with people who think that's the message of The Last Jedi, is to tear down everything that came before it, but rather to look...
That's Kylo's point.
Yes, exactly. Kylo Ren's the one who's all about destroying the past. And Luke is too, until Luke realizes, no, this is something that should continue. It is, though, an honest assessment of, these were mistakes that we made. This wasn't perfect. But we have to learn from those mistakes.
Right.
That's why that Yoda scene
in there. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why that Yoda scene is so important. That the texts aren't important to Luke anymore because he's gone to a certain point. But the texts are important for Rey. I've heard so many people talk about that plot point as well, if the texts are important, why does Rey need them?
That's not what Yoda's saying.
That's not the point.
Yeah, because Yoda clearly sends her off with them.
Right. She has everything she needs.
Yeah. Which is the Jedi text.
Exactly. And the Jedi text and the heart that she has.
Yes.
Is ultimately what it is. So I always like coming back to this idea of, needing to really making sure to understand there's good and bad in our past, but we have to learn from both the good and the bad as we progress forward with these lessons. And because otherwise, if we don't evolve, then what are we?
Animals ultimately, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea, well, I mean, bringing in Eastern philosophy of the karmic cycle of life, of if you don't evolve past this, if you don't learn from your mistakes and you don't learn from this cycle of life, you're doomed to repeat it.
Right.
You're going to keep doing this until the lesson is learned.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a common theme in all fantasy and, stories like Star Wars, where it's there's a cycle. There's Vader, and then there's Luke, and now there's going to be Kylo. It's a cycle that is continuously repeated, because ultimately it's really difficult to it's easy to say that, but when you're living life, like I know, like my parents and grandparents lived and learned things that I probably should have learned from.
Yeah.
But I did not have. Some things you have to learn on your own.
Right.
Right? Like some things you can't learn from a book.
Yeah.
Some things you can't learn just by being told. Some mistakes some people have to make, and some people have to make them repeatedly.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the suffering of life, of learning from those mistakes and learning to overcome those shortcomings.
Right.
And that's where the story of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and any of these other big epic stories of a hero overcoming trials and stuff like that becomes inspirational for us and becomes meaningful for us. It becomes something then that we can hang our hat on and say, okay, I'm going through this. Luke handled it this way. Luke faced himself on Dagobah. He faced Vader and saw himself in Vader. I am facing a really hard time. I have to realize that my situation isn't going to be fixed by anybody else. It's going to be fixed by me, because I'm at the heart of my own problems.
Right.
Everything that I'm suffering right now is really because of my own attachment. Like all that is in there, and you can learn that stuff through these stories, and that's what makes them, so powerful. That's why I constantly come back to Star Wars. There's as they continue to tell new stories and new versions of the same stories, there's things to mine from that at various stages of your life, and that's invaluable to me. That's invaluable.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let us know what you think. You can always get in touch with us, not just on our social media, but through Discord. I'd love for you guys to join the conversation with us. We are on there pretty much all the time. You're more than welcome to message us at any given time on Discord. So you can find the information for Discord. And if you want to be part of the podcast, if you really like what we're doing and want to see us do more shows like this and launch other podcasts as part of the Certain Point of View family, we'd love for you to let us know. And one of the best ways to make that happen is by being a patron. You can check out Patreon and all of this other information on our website at certainpov.com. Again, that is certainpov.com. And until next time, stay scruffy, my nerf herder.